Robert Wexler is the Executive Director of the Center for Middle East Peace and Economic Cooperation. He served in the U.S. House of Representatives for 5 terms. Throughout his tenure in Congress, Mr. Wexler was an outspoken advocate for the unbreakable bond between the United States and Israel, and a leading proponent of Israel's right to self-defense and the need for a just and comprehensive resolution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It is a particular honor to appear before this committee, before so many friends and colleagues, to discuss certain challenges in the Middle East. We must work closely with our strategic partners and allies to achieve success. First, we must defeat ISIS and not just contain it. Our regional partners must carry a greater burden with military, financial, and diplomatic contributions. Secretary Clinton has laid out an ambitious 3-point plan to defeat ISIS. She will work with a broad coalition to destroy ISIS's strongholds in Iraq and Syria. She will dismantle the global network of terror, denying terrorists money, arms, and fighters. And she will strengthen our defenses at home. By contrast, Donald Trump has no plan whatsoever. Extremist groups like ISIS feed off instability and conflict, especially in Iraq. To achieve stability, Baghdad must pursue a more inclusive government and deliver for Iraqis while rooting out corruption. What is happening in Syria is a moral travesty. At least 250,000 dead and nearly 5 million refugees. Taking action is essential for both our security and our values. We must reach a diplomatic solution that provides for new leadership and enables Syrians to take on ISIS. Tehran's fingerprints are on nearly every conflict across the Middle East. Iran supports terrorism and repeatedly calls to destroy Israel. Iran's human rights record is abysmal. Iran must never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. I support the international nuclear agreement between the P5+1 nations and Iran because, with vigorous enforcement, it verifiably thwarts all of Iran's pathways to a nuclear bomb without resorting to war. The nuclear deal enables us to more strenuously push back against Iran's destabilizing activities in the region, particularly their support for terrorist proxies like Hezbollah. Secretary Clinton will ensure that non-nuclear sanctions continue to be implemented, particularly to rein in Iran's illicit ballistic missile program. Achieving our national security objectives requires close collaboration with our allies, first and foremost, Israel. Hillary Clinton and Democrats support Israel's right to defend itself. Democrats not only have a long-standing record of friendship with Israel, but also an ironclad commitment to Israel's security. This has been the case from the moment President Truman recognized Israel just 11 minutes after declaring its independence, and Secretary Clinton will continue that commitment. Yesterday's terrorist attack in Tel Aviv was yet another painful reminder of the threats Israel faces, including from Hamas, and the importance of the United States standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel. We must unequivocally support Israel's right to defend herself and ensure its qualitative military edge, including through a new 10-year defense memorandum. The Obama administration has had unprecedented defense and intelligence cooperation with Israel, which must continue. We want peace and security in the Middle East. We are committed to a negotiated 2-state solution that guarantees Israel's future as a secure and democratic Jewish state with recognized borders and Jerusalem as its capital, and provides Palestinians with justice, sovereignty, and dignity. Israelis deserve security, recognition, and a normal life free from terror. And Palestinians deserve to govern themselves in their own contiguous and viable state. The best way to achieve peace and security is for both sides to implement confidence-building measures and avoid unhelpful actions. Incitement is dangerous and undermines a negotiated two-state outcome. While some proponents of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement may hope that pressuring Israel will lead to peace, the truth is outside forces will not resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Particularly when anti-Semitism is rising throughout the world, Democrats must condemn efforts to isolate and delegitimize Israel. Of course, no country is above criticism, but the delegitimization of Israel must stop immediately. Walking away from the Middle East is not an option because we have deep national interests at stake. It would be an error, terrible error, to cede the mantle of leadership for global peace and security. At the same time, we certainly must not allow military adventurism like Donald Trump suggests, such as bombing countries to take their oil. Americans face a clear choice in this election, and the outcome could not be more critical. Thank you for your time.
Questions?
I have one, and
Okay.
he has one. You want to start,
Dr.
Colonel?
West?
Yes, it's a blessing to see you, though, and I appreciate the conversation we had yesterday.
Likewise.
As you know, I have very deep disagreements with you, my brother, but I think I want to see where we can reach common ground, a higher ground. I think both of us can agree that a precious Palestinian baby in the West Bank has exactly the same value as a precious Jewish baby in Tel Aviv. And therefore, when we talk about evenness at the moral and spiritual level, you come out of the rich Judaic tradition, I come out of a rich Christian tradition. We overlap in that regard. The real question's going to be a commitment to security for precious Jewish brothers and sisters in Israel can never be predicated on an occupation of precious Palestinians. If we're concerned about security, it seems to me, we're going to have to talk seriously about occupation. I don't know whether you would allow the use of that word. You know, New York Times said we got to put it in inverted commas. You know what I mean? No, occupation is real, it's concrete. But at the same time, how do we acknowledge Jewish people, 2,000 years, hated, haunted, vicious contempt, pogroms, Shoah, and so forth? Preoccupation with security, understandable. Palestinians, made in the image of God like anybody else, wrestling with occupation for 50-some years, demeaned, devalued, dominated, exploited. For too long, the Democratic Party has been beholden to AIPAC, that didn't take seriously the humanity of Palestinian brothers and sisters. We're at a turning point now. And of course, it's going to be a slow one in the Democratic Party, but some of us will be working outside the Democratic Party to make it quicker. That's why I support the BDS, not because I think it's anti-Semitic. We've got to fight anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish hatred. It goes hand in hand with every Christian civilization, and many Islamic civilization is wrong, it's unjust, but that cannot be the excuse of in any way downplaying the unbelievable misery that we see in Gaza, in West Bank, and other places. So my first question would be, would you argue for the use of the word occupation in the platform? And two, how would you respond to those who say for so long the United States has been so biased toward Israeli security and not accented the humanity of Palestinians, that to talk about even-handedness is always a version of anti-Semitism as opposed to a struggle for justice? And you let me know whether that's fair or not, because I want to make sure our dialogue is mediated with respect. I respect you, my brother. I know you respect me, but we just have deep disagreements.
Sure. And Dr. West, I appreciate the comments. No, I would not support and would in fact oppose the use of the word occupation for the very reason that it undermines our common objective. Your objective and my objective, and more importantly, the objective of Secretary Clinton, of President Obama, of the Democratic Party, is to achieve a negotiated two-state outcome. A negotiated two-state outcome will result in an agreement on borders. And once you have borders, the issue that propels your concern regarding what you refer to as occupation will be resolved. And anything short of a two-state outcome, you will not be happy, you will not achieve your result, I will not achieve what I seek to achieve, but more importantly, the Palestinian people will not seek and receive what they justly deserve, and the Israeli people will not achieve what they justly deserve. So we have to consistently keep with behavior that promotes and encourages a two-state outcome. That would be my point of view, and that, more importantly, should be the focus of the Democratic platform, in addition to its consistent, heartfelt support for Israel's security, because the foundation of a two-state outcome is both the security of Israelis and Palestinians. And let's be candid, if we could. When we talk about security, oftentimes the focus is on Israel. But if there was a lack of security in the West Bank, it would be the moderate Palestinians who would suffer the most, not the extremists. So the need for security in Israel and the need for the West Bank to have its security is designed all around the support of a two-state outcome and the actors that support moderation and the implementation of a Palestinian state.
Just 3 words I want to ask you about. The first is the question of settlements. You mentioned unilateral actions should be avoided. Are settlements unilateral actions? And secondly, you mentioned that Israel has a right to defend itself, but would you agree or disagree that that self-defense has been disproportionate? And thirdly, on the question of occupation, it has been recognized by every U.S. administration that there is an occupation, and there are pieces of legislation circulating that sort of want to rewrite that notion, much to the dismay and concern of people literally around the world, to sort of define a post-67 Israel, which is itself a unilateral action taken by our Congress that redefines the borders unilaterally. Would you not feel that it is more important to include the word occupation, which our president, this current president, has mentioned, and every previous president has mentioned, as a way simply of clarifying that to get to 2 states, an occupation has to end?
Jim, you and I are friends, and we go way back, and I respect your point of view enormously. Where I would differ with your conclusion is that, number one, in terms of our platform, our position should be the position of every Republican and Democratic administration since President Johnson. And we shouldn't be any less or any more in terms of how we deal with settlements, and we should be consistent. But with all due respect, for those that focus only on settlements, you in effect undermine the whole equation that supports a negotiated 2-state outcome. Settlements is one part of this very problematic story, but so is Jerusalem, and so is refugees, and so is security, and so are borders. So pointing out one where there will be delicate, no doubt, discussions and negotiations, again, hopefully someday soon, where parties will have to make compromises, but not at the same time also discuss what's required on refugees.
So should we leave Jerusalem out of the platform? I think that that would fit your notion appropriately.
No.
That we should not negotiate or litigate any of the issues in the platform. I would agree with that.
Well, I would agree that we should not litigate the resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in terms of the Democratic platform.
Except for the issues you want to litigate.
Well, no. In fairness, nobody's suggesting, to my knowledge, that the issue of refugees should be determined in the Democratic platform, that refugees will not be returning in mass to the state of Israel. That's not being, I don't think, to my knowledge, suggested. The point is the Democratic platform is a blueprint for bringing the 2 sides to a conclusion where our shared objectives are met. You and I, respectfully, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I believe we have the same objective, and that is a creation of a demilitarized Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with a Jewish and democratic state of Israel, a Jewish majority democratic state of Israel. And the borders will be negotiated, settlements will be negotiated as a result, the status of Jerusalem will be negotiated, refugees will be negotiated, security will be negotiated. And that's what the Democratic Platform has effectively said for decades, and that's what it should continue to say.
We have a number of hands up, and I'm just trying to be mindful of making sure everybody gets to ask their question. I'm wondering if you all would mind if everyone asks their question and then we ask Mr. Wexler to respond. Does that work for people? So I'm going to just come down the row. We have Howard, Deborah, Bonnie are the hands I've seen up, and then Wendy, and then Congressman Wexler, if you could keep track, and we will come back to you. I'm sure you'll be able to.
Look, we're going to be drafting a platform to recommend to the platform committee. This is going to be a subject of debate from now through the St. Louis drafting meetings. Dr. West makes a very valid point. The Palestinian child and the Israeli child both should be sacred. Do we want, my friend Bob Wexler made, I thought, a wonderful case. The issues are resolved. The question of borders, the question of what has happened if we can get the 2 states for 2 people. Not just so Israel can be both a Jewish homeland and a democracy, but so that the Palestinian aspirations for self-governance and dignity and the issues that Bob referenced can also be met. I could come up with a list, if we want this platform to get into it, of issues of incitement, of the failure of the Palestinian Authority leadership to say yes or to yes but, to rewarding the families of people who go. I could go through all of this. I don't want that to be what this platform does. And that's why I think for people who, if we want the same end result, I think we should, number one, make sure that Hillary Clinton is the next president of the United States, to maximize those chances. And secondly, think about our responsibility in this platform in the context of what can bring us together and not divide us. And that's, I don't have a question mark at the end of that sentence, but.
I guess it doesn't sit well for me when I hear that we need to go to war to create peace. That just doesn't sit well for me. And that's my sentiment. My question is, you know, as we sit here and listen to the amount of homelessness and infrastructure, education needs, everything that's happening here in the United States, my concern is now we want to continue war, and that's something that I'm not a support of. I think we need to continue discussions, negotiations, peace, and you know, I guess my ultimate question would be how much is this going to cost us? We're looking at going back out into war and looking at increasing military. What's that going to cost us? And how many lives is that going to cost us here in the United States while we're in another country fighting?
Congressman Wexler, I'm one of your constituents in Florida. Good to see you. I do believe in a 2-state solution, but I believe that it must happen when there is no fighting, when Israel is secure, and it should be negotiated between the Palestinians, the Israelis, under the guidance of the United States, and that's it. agree with you, Brother West, that it's very important that, you know, there are lives at stake. These are human beings, you know, on both sides. And I believe that there should be peace. And once and for all, I would like to see peace in my lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you. So the last hand was Wendy Sherman.
Thank you very much. Very good to see you, Congressman. I think fundamentally what I'd like you to respond to is your testimony was about all of the Middle East. And I think going to what Deborah Parker just asked, if you would sort of reaffirm America's national security interest. That is really what American national security and foreign policy is about. It is about what is in our national security interest. And what you laid out, as I heard you, was dealing with ISIL. I couldn't agree more. I don't think the American people want to send lots of troops. I don't think Secretary Clinton and certainly Senator Sanders do not believe in war as a first resort. They believe in war as a last resort. Our national security interest is to do our role to make sure that terrorism is stamped out, as I understand it, and I want to know if this is your point of view, Congressman Wexler. It is in our national security interest to promote democracy and peace in the Middle East, and where Israel is concerned and where the Palestinians are concerned, that's a two-state solution. I think the words that sum it up for me the best are ones that Secretary Clinton used in her Saban speech, where she said, only a two-state solution can provide Palestinians independence, sovereignty, and dignity, critical to your point, and provide Israelis the secure and recognized borders of a democratic Jewish state. And she went on to say, Israelis deserve security, recognition, and a normal life free from terror, and, separate sentence, equally as strongly, Palestinians should be able to govern themselves in their own state in peace and dignity. In my view, that has been really the standard for the Democratic Party. And our differences are really with the Republican Party in how we prosecute peace, not war, in the Middle East. And I wonder if that is your point of view as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Wexler, thank you. We have a lot of witnesses waiting, and we get kicked out of this room literally at 5 o'clock. So we will ask you if you could please do your response in 3 minutes.
I'll try to do better.
There's a light right there in front of you that'll help you.
Okay.
Thank you.
With respect to Ms. Sherman's most recent comments, in terms of defining national interests in the context of why I am here, the last part of the presentation was about, number one, the necessity of America continuing its global leadership role. And that global leadership role is, as Wendy defined it, to defeat terror in whatever form it comes up, where it has an impact on our interests, which unfortunately what we have learned, where there is a void of leadership, more often than not it is filled by interests that are adverse to us and our allies. So first and foremost, of course, is defeating ISIS. Not containing ISIS, but defeating ISIS. Second, of course, is the continuing effort to build or help build a scenario in Iraq in which the Iraqi government, an inclusive Iraqi government, can begin to function in a more full fashion. With respect to Syria, a diplomatic resolution along the lines of what Secretary Kerry is working so diligently to achieve must be the policy. With respect to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, yes, Secretary Clinton's speech at Saban was, in my humble estimation, the ultimate statement of American policy and where we should go as a nation and as a party. But if I could respond specifically to some of the points, Deborah in particular, that I think is crucial because they are often misunderstood. You know, whether one agrees with Prime Minister Netanyahu or not, one point he always makes is that Israel is our one ally that never, ever has asked, and I can't imagine would ever ask, for an American to do their fighting for them. Israelis fight for themselves. And what they ask for is the commitment of the United States to assist their security. So the whole goal of our relationship with Israel and the whole goal of the implementation of a two-state outcome is to avoid conflict, is to avoid the very types of wars that you're discussing. But God forbid we should ever be in a scenario where American military personnel were asked that in a way to be involved that hasn't yet occurred. That's not the goal. Exactly opposite is the goal. And one other thing, if I may. President Obama, I believe in his first weeks in office, said that resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was in American national security interests. That still remains, but we shouldn't be naive. We could resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict tomorrow. Syria will still be a mess. Iraq will still have its problems. Libya will still be dysfunctional. So we have to put it in a proper context.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next